Hello, my name is Kevin Fleming from Grupo Mariana. I am the developer of Playa Mariana in Nicaragua, and I've been in Nicaragua for close to 20 years. That is my background where I come at you today. And to put things in perspective, we're developing a 923-acre project on the beach, about 8 kilometers south of Mazachapa here in Nicaragua. And I want to say right away, for those of you about to watch this presentation today and over the next 5 days, I'm not here to sell you real estate any of these days. My clear focus is to help you take the next step and how to decipher where to invest in real estate overseas and how to avoid the common mistakes that people make. Because if you can make them, I haven't made them all, but I've certainly made a few, and I can certainly help you shortcut and save the amount of money that you might lose not knowing what you don't know. And being that I'm a real estate developer for the last 20 years, I have a unique perspective on how to guide you in making that good decision. Now, this is called the One Country Way Challenge for a reason. And that is because I find most people have real difficulty in selecting what country it is or where to even begin. So my goal today, my promise to you today is I'm going to give you an indication of how to look at things a little bit different in how to cut down to the countries that are going to make it easier for you to understand where you want to go. Because the number one problem that people have is overwhelm. And more information is not generally better. More information is actually worse. The goal today is to help you understand why applying a filter to the information that you're getting is going to help you, and to build upon that, the criteria that you should be looking at that creates that filter, and then how to get out of that logical analysis paralysis and simply never moving. So when that sounds great, type yes in the chat. Let me know you guys are ready to start, because if I don't get you guys involved right now, you're going to be bored and I'm going to lose you. So pay attention to my words. I want to start by just explaining a little bit more about myself. I came to Nicaragua 20 years ago. My story is one born of meeting a woman in Vancouver, and she was a local Nicaraguan. That's right. I met and married eventually a Nicaraguan. And the night that I met her was very interesting because I was out and it really wasn't supposed to go out that evening, but it turns out away I go. And I was in this restaurant and I was walking by this woman who I just saw, and I'm like, I got to talk to this woman. And with my best Spanish, I went up to her and I said, like, hola, ¿cómo estás? I didn't really know much Spanish at the time. I just knew she had that Latin exotic look, and that's what I liked. And what happened that night was I got to know a little bit about Nicaragua. And it wasn't like more than 5 or 7 minutes into the conversation where my wife was like, I'm basically finishing university and I'm moving to Nicaragua. I'm moving back home. And I'm like, I took that to mean, yeah, I'm not really interested in meeting any guys. I'm finishing school, I'm focused, and I'm getting out of here. And I was like, well, tell me more about Nicaragua, because crazy people aren't scared of anything. And so for the rest of that night, I was absolutely amazed at what Nicaragua had to offer. And that became my journey into learning more. So this was August 2003. So that's how far I go back. So we're going back to August 2003. It was in January 2004 that I asked my wife to marry me, and then got married in Nicaragua. My first time in Nicaragua, my first time in Latin America, never had even traveled to Mexico. And here I was getting married in Nicaragua, basically arriving on the plane with the wedding dress and showing up at church a couple of days later. And it was amazing. And then I spent a month honeymoon in Nicaragua looking for land on our honeymoon, because real estate was the way in which we were going to go. So when some people get started in searching for the country, mine was born by accident. It wasn't one whereby I had done years and years of research, and I knew that whether it was the Pacific side of Mexico, or was going to be the Caribbean side, or the Baja, or whether it's going to be Dominican Republic or in Panama or Costa Rica, I had no idea. I just didn't have an idea. So I fell into Nicaragua backwards, ass backwards, you might say. And from there, I've just been learning about all the countries that are available for people to go and visit. Now, some of you might have found this webinar because you made it onto our list. And during this challenge, we've been promoting over the months this 17 country split test. And this was information that I collected basically over time through a number of resources that helps people analyze the cost, the time, the savings, the fit of individual countries for people. What we're going to do is we're going to try and shortcut that for you. Now, I was preparing this information. I was preparing the information for this presentation. First, I was looking at about 3,000 slides that I've collected information over time. Then I was like, that's no way that's going to work. And then we got down to about 2,000 and then 1,000. And now I'm down to no slides. So my plan today and tomorrow and Wednesday and Thursday, where I'm going to be live on site at my project, where we get more into the actual purchasing of real estate. Today, I want to focus more on helping individuals who might be seeing this for the first time. Where do they go to take the first step? What it's like to live overseas, international, in the case that you have not done it before. So what does that look like? So I explained my process from Nicaragua, moving to Nicaragua, getting married to my wife, Maria. And one of the things that people are generally scared about in moving to a new country is the language. So in my case, I didn't speak Spanish. So you have to understand, in my background, I was working in a corporate career for 13 years. And I was really happy. So I can't be here to tell you that I was unhappy and I found this place and I had to escape. My story is not like that. But for some of you, it might be. So the question becomes, where do you move to? Language is going to be important. Here, I didn't speak Spanish when I started. When I moved to Nicaragua, I didn't have any friends. I didn't have any family. I didn't have a job waiting for me. I was broke from having a wedding in Nicaragua. So we were really starting from scratch. So when I say that, my story is one of just, you can do it, I guess, is the presence of this challenge here for you is to take the next steps so you're able to move forward and just feel confidence about what you want to do, it is that you can do. Now, you might be here. You might be here because one, over the period of time, you generally fall into about 3 or 4 categories. One, you might be a retiree looking for that place where you want to retire into the future. 2, you're simply a real estate investor looking to park some money and some capital out of the country. You may be a little bit of both, a real estate investor, and you want to enjoy your place every so often, maybe once or twice a year or twice every couple of years, and you're looking to make some cash flow whereby it helps to mitigate the expenses that you're going to have. You might be a real estate agent looking for more listings. That's generally where you'll fall into those categories. And each individual, whether it's a newbie or you're experienced, you'll come at things from a different angle. Now, recently I had an interview done, and it was a whole bunch of questions done on the lifestyle of what it's like to live in the country. So when that's of interest to you, I'm just gonna look at the chat right now. I want to know where, if you can, everybody can tell me, maybe just chat in there where you're from, or if you've owned property abroad, or where the last place was you visited. I want to try and get a sense of what are the single most important questions you have about real estate overseas, because I'm here for you. And the goal over the next 5 days is to treat you like you're in my home. When clients come into country, and we've had 66 of them over the last 20 years, so have invested over $10 million here in Nicaragua with our companies. And everybody becomes much similar to like a friend because you're not left alone in the country. So I want to be sure that because we're a small group right now, I can handle all those questions that you might have. Otherwise, I'm just going to continue to tell you a little bit about what we're doing. So being and traveling around the world, I've had the opportunity to stand in front of audiences and present Nicaragua to the world. And I remember being at one conference in New York, and this was a financial conference. And I remember somebody coming up and go, "Oh, you're really You're really like I was the mouse in this room of elephants because I had no idea what I was doing at the time. I just thought being in front of an audience of financial advisors was going to be a great way to meet people to raise capital for the infrastructure of the development. Little did I know what it really took and what all these people were looking at. Now, years later, I can shortcut the process for you to give you a wide angle view of what the big money players, the financial analysts, the private family offices, the institutions, they all essentially look for four things. What are those four things? One is the safety of the country. Two is the location and access. Three is the tourism opportunities in the country. And four is the foreign investment. Those are the signals that people are watching for with big money and capital to come into a country. Now, there's something to when you're not sure where to invest, follow the money. I'm not sure if has anyone ever heard that saying, follow the money before? And there is a lot of truth to that. And certainly in real estate, it does hold true as well. The flip side of that is there are times where you're watching where the money is going, but by the time you decide to invest, you're no longer really getting in early. You're more looking at the leftovers. So the purpose of this challenge is not to guide you towards buy early, buy pre-construction. This is where we're going to make the most money. You certainly will, but that's not this purpose because everybody is going to be different of why you invest. For example, I wouldn't guide someone towards a real estate purchase and a pre-construction development when looking to retire in 2 years. That would not be a good idea. Somebody who's in their early 40s to early 50s and looking for an investment property to park some money, they don't need the money, it's not doing anything, they have a long-term horizon, yeah, pre-construction, that's for you. Okay. So everyone's going to be a little bit different. The retiree might be looking at real estate, not from the point of view of investment, not from the point of view of that's a great condominium. They might be going to bed at night, and the only thing they're thinking about is they're worried that they're going to outlive the money that they have left. So they're looking for a place where the cost of living is going to be lower, and therefore the criteria will change. So in this particular challenge, there's not one answer that's going to fit everybody, but the one thing that will apply to everybody is this. When I said earlier that most people collect information and collect information and collect information, it literally leads to just overwhelm. And the way I like to put it, in the case you're sitting right in front of me, I would tell you, you need to start eliminating countries more than you need to start looking at more countries. And I'll give you an example. I have a buddy, Mike, who's staying with me. He's on the line right now. And I used an example with him just a couple of days ago when I was talking about this challenge. And I was like, I can take probably almost anyone looking at 100 countries and get him down to one country in about 3 minutes. And some of the questions you would ask are very simple to start eliminating hemispheres, eliminating countries, eliminating regions really, really fast. So I'll give you an example. Let's assume you're somebody from North America, lower half United States, or maybe even from Alberta, like Reg. And I would ask you, what culture are you most interested in? Do you want to move into a culture where you speak in Chinese? Do you like Vietnamese, Filipino, Spanish, French? And very quickly, you're going to choose a country whereby that culture is located. So for this example, let's use Spanish. So there's really two regions where you're going to move to learn Spanish. Either you're going to be in Europe and Spain primarily, or you're going to be in Mexico, South Central America. So the next question would be, well, if you want to go to Spain from, let's say, Alberta, that's going to be like a 10-hour flight. Or if you want to go to Nicaragua, you could be there in 8 hours. So how far do you want to fly? And of course, Europe is more expensive with the dollar and the exchange. So someone might say, no, I want to stay in the Western Hemisphere. Okay, very good. So you just eliminate about 50 countries out of 100. Now you want to stay in the Western Hemisphere. You want to be in Mexico or South America or Central America. Well, now you're down to Mexico and 19 countries between Central America and South America. So you're at 20 countries now. Now, some people like Mexico, some people don't. Some people like, I might find South America too far. So let's say you want to go into the region of Central America because you're looking to get more value for your dollar. So that's not going to be Mexico because Mexico is played out and certainly more expensive. You can find lower price development areas in the country, but not in a real estate development standpoint of view. From a real estate standpoint of view, and getting into a country with a cost of living, now you're into Central America. Now you can start applying the filter a little bit more closely with safety and access and tourism and foreign investment and start peeking into each one of those countries. And very quickly, you'll eliminate the countries that are unsafe. And then you'll quickly eliminate the countries that have been on the market for a long time, like Costa Rica and Panama. And what you're left with is not very many options. And so you can go from 100 countries down to 3 really fast when you know what criteria it is that you want to apply. So my advice to people, if there's one thing to take away from this challenge day to day, and we're just getting started, it's simply choose the language and the region first, and then ignore every other country afterwards. Because it won't matter what you compare Vietnam to Panama. It won't matter what you compare the Philippines to Mexico. If you have no interest of going to that side of the world, it just creates confusion for you. So the way in which you move forward to get rid of that analysis paralysis is by applying that filter and the criteria. And everybody's going to be a little bit different. So whether language is important to you, healthcare is important to you, the drive time from the airport, the cost of living, the culture of the country in which you're looking for, these are criterias that you want to have as an absolute must. The problem that I see the most is I will ask people when I talk to them one-on-one, similar to what I'm talking to you right now. I ask you, it's like, all right, so what's important to you? And the challenge there is most people just don't even know what's important to them to begin with. And therein lies the problem. Now, knowing what countries are safe and safe, we should talk about that. Safe, in my mind, comes down to really 2 things. When people say safety, the first thing that might come to mind is violent crime. Am I going to get robbed? Is it dangerous? And that's all important. I don't want to minimize the importance of that. But the other side of safety also is in countries where stability of institutions are in place, where countries have been tested during really tough times, but the structures are still there. They may have taken a beating here and there are a few knocks, but things are still working. So not all countries are the same when you look abroad, whereby the perception of what you might think is completely different than the reality on the ground. And that's normal because everyone's heard the saying, perception is, reality. And in this particular challenge, although I'm in Granada, Nicaragua, and it's sunny and it's the dry scene and it's absolutely amazing, for 20 years, I've had to deal with the questions of politics, the history of a country going back to the 80s. I mean, 45 years ago, people might still be asking or wondering if there's war going on in the country. So my advice to those of you watching here today is try to eliminate the perception that you have and come at things from an open mind. Now, this challenge is 5 days long, so the purpose is not to drop 75 bombs on you and convince you to buy real estate. My goal here is to try and shortcut that process for you so you ask the right questions. Now, there are plenty of experts out there like International Living, Escape Artists, and they promote 20 to 30 countries around the world and they give you a broad taste of everything. My focus is Nicaragua. You may have found this because you're looking at Nicaragua or I showed up wherever your search is. But the lessons that I've learned here could apply to any country, to any real estate project you're looking for, to any due diligence filter you want to put on a development, to apply that filter to everything. And so my goal here is to help you avoid those common mistakes that people make and tell you what no real estate developer or agent wants you to know. And that's because some might not even know to even tell you these things, and others will simply try and hide it. And it's not to say that there's bad real estate developers out there or bad agents. There are good ones and bad ones. It's a mix. In most of these countries, from a real estate agent standpoint of view, you might run, I'm going to get crap for this one, that's for sure. You just watch the comments and the replays. You know, a lot of people are part-time surfers in the morning, okay, and the real estate agents in the afternoon. And I'll give you an example of this. I remember very early on, and this is good if you're coming into country and you're looking for something to buy secure and safe, or you have something in mind, or you found the project wherever it might be that you're interested in. I remember when we got started back in 2006, 7, 8, we were like really busy. And I was so busy that I could not handle all the leads coming in from the people in Nicaragua. And I simply didn't have enough time to go to the project all the time to show the land. So I went looking for an agent. I won't mention any names on this one, but I found a really top brand, high tier, familiar real estate company operating in Nicaragua that operates over 500 outlets in the US. And I remember signing up with them and negotiating what the commission was going to be and what their responsibilities were going to be. And I was going to direct leads their way. And I would get emails, and then I would just forward it to these people because they were interested in coming into the country. And so it was about a month or two into this agreement that I found out that I'm like, I've been sending all these leads to these people, but these people aren't coming to the project, but I know they're coming into country. So I decided to investigate and start calling around. And what I learned was the agents in the country who the clients went to when they actually came into country, they were showing the people properties that were simply closer to the office. So instead of driving an hour and a half or 2 hours from where the office was to our location to show the individual a property they came to the country to see, they would take them to the closest property where they had a higher commission and it was just easier to get to and faster. And so when I learned of that, I was like, oh, that's no good. So I basically canceled all opportunities for real estate agents outside of our company to look after the sales of property at our land. But you need to watch out for that because agents themselves may not know all the details of the project. They simply have a commission in mind. They might tell you what you want to hear. In fact, they might tell you stuff that they don't even know the most recent update. They're just showing you what's close. And so you got to watch out for that. All right. So that's one mistake you want to be careful to try to avoid, which is basically falling into one real estate agency only. Now, as a side note, there are some things that might make things difficult for you to put into practice when choosing what country to go to. And it's this. The one thing you have to keep in mind is, and the importance of that filter and coming to the criteria, when you start to go into country and doing your site visits or your investigation, whether you're going to like this country or not, it's going to become really, really expensive because you can spend easily $1,000, $2,000 with the hotel, $3,000 with transportation. And I don't know how many of you are prepared to spend 3-4 days in country, $3,000 or $4,000 per country, and go see X amount of countries to do your due diligence. And that's taken into consideration that you know exactly what your due diligence should be and the list of items that you want to check off. Later in the week, we're going to get into the most important things for you to know about buying property safely. That's not for today. I'm going to save that for maybe Tuesday or Wednesday. But when you follow along in this challenge, the goal is to walk you through the process to the point in which when you come into the country, you already know what country to choose because you already chosen the region. But when you come to country, you're well prepared to ask the right questions. In fact, you will know the questions, what to ask before you even come into country. And that'll help you define how many projects you're going to see in the country. I'll give you another example. When you come in for a 3 or 4 day trip, you could pretty well bank upon the one project you're interested in the most may take you the entire day just to fully vet that project. And when you're in the country, it's going to take you at least another day just to experience a small taste of what the culture has to offer. So when you do your site visits or you come into the country, you're going to be here for at least 3 days. Now, in the case that you want to go see other projects in the country, understanding the driving distance is going to be important because they make for long days. So I'll give you an example. A couple months back, in November, I went on a complete tour of Nicaragua. I'll just use Nicaragua as an example because that's where I am, that's what I did. And it gives you an indication of what can transpire, whether it's in Panama or Costa Rica or Vietnam. I went to go see 4 projects in one day and 2 cities. And we were on the road for 12 hours. And in each individual project, we were maybe there for maybe a half hour, except for one that we had lunch for an hour. And that was barely enough time to even just see the property. We didn't meet nobody. We just went and drove by and drove in and drove out. And I tell you this because when people come into country, to properly do your due diligence on a project, you'll need a full day. So the thought process of I'm just going to drop into a country and I'm going to swing by the project, I'm going to take a look what's going on, it's not going to do you any good unless you're buying something that's already built. But having said that, there are things when you buy stuff that's already built you're going to want to be aware of also. Now, I want to look at the chat. Reg, you asked this question, security of purchase. When you say that, because I can take this opportunity to answer that questions now. Can you clarify a little bit more? Is that more title? Is your deposit in escrow? Give me a little more taste of what that question is, and I can answer it right now for you since we're here. Reg is going to probably type in his answer, but I'll go on right now. So I mentioned about a month ago, I did this interview with a YouTube channel called You Live Where. And shout out to Diego. He's watching this today. He's really an excellent interviewer. We were on the call for an hour and 20 minutes. So I'm not going to go through everything that we talked about in that interview, but I highly suggest you watch it. But one of the core things that I took out of that interview for the individuals that were listening that I wanted to impart upon the people looking at real estate overseas as a purchase is it's a very personal thing. It's not going to be often where you're going to spend $100, $200, $300,000 on property. So understanding the details of what it takes is very important. Now, in my line of work, I can tell you part of buying properly securely overseas is most people don't know what questions to ask, and it's understandably. I'm just reading what's Reg, the stability of the institutions, who has title, what is the legal system, is it common law? Okay, right. So those are really detail specific to each country. Okay, I get where you're coming from, Reg. I'll come back to that a little bit. I'll follow along my train of thought here, and I'll answer that. Because this is the part where I tell you where no real estate or developer wants you to know. How do I come at this? There's in every country, in every development, for every developer, for every website you see, for every email you receive, for every webinar, challenge, presentation like this, there's really always two worlds going on. Okay. There's the world you see, okay, and then there's the crap you don't see. All right. And much of the details and the risk is always happening in the crap you don't see. Now, unfortunately, that stuff is not sexy to talk about. It's not something that maybe not all real estate developers want to bring to your attention. And quite frankly, the details can be extremely boring. But there's always something going on. And some of those things might be, I'll give you an example. Let's say you're buying a property and you're checking out the title. All right. and your title is good. But what you might not know is the developer's having some fight in the background with his neighbors, claiming that you're on his land, or the fence is encroaching upon his property, or he's stealing water from the river. I mean, all this stuff goes on the side of things. When it comes to title, each country, I use Nicaragua. This is a perfect example. All right. When it comes to title in Nicaragua specifically, all right, and it could be different in other countries, so I don't propose to be an expert in every single country and every single title. But in Nicaragua, there's 5 different types of title. All right. And some titles are definitely more valuable than others. So, for example, you have freehold title, which is a title common to ownership in the States, where you own it in your name or a company. You have agrarian title, which is commonly referred to land that was once confiscated back in the day. And now the new title that was created is called an agrarian title. And it can get further complicated, whether it's undivided or it's divided, depending upon how many names are on that title. There is communal title. There's lease land, concession, possession. Each one of those have different values. So, for example, concession property. In the country, the concession property is like lease land. And I myself have spent over $400,000 on a concession lease land type of title for a beach house, and it's absolutely fine. But you never really own it. You can sell the concession to somebody else, but you never really own the land outright to transfer onto the heirs. You're always some municipality or a different part of the country that's going to own that property. You have possession land. These are titles born from people who, for lack of a better word, were squatting on a property for a period of time. And because no one challenged their rights to be there, they've now gotten possession of the property and they're recognized as owners of the land. But they might not even have a deed or a title. And then, so going back to freehold title, for example, the first property that I bought, you want to talk about experience. The first property I bought when I came into country with my wife, which was a story in itself. I told you we got married in Nicaragua, but it was about a month that we got back in December. And then after Christmas, my wife and I were talking. It's like, yes, we're going to get involved in Nicaragua. We're going to go to move to Nicaragua, but I'm going to give up this job of 13 years. What am I going to do in the country? I'm a Canadian. I can't go work in the country. Kind of broke. So it was, well, let's go look for some real estate. And so that's what she did. Now, she went looking, she left. Can you imagine a picture? I just got married in November and she left in January and basically never came back. And the details of the story are a little bit longer. But on her trip to Nicaragua looking for land, she found some land. And then she found some more land. Eventually found some land that we wanted to negotiate a purchase. And that's what we eventually did. We negotiated this 17-acre parcel of land that we can buy in pieces over time, and it was over like $1 million. The title was freehold, so it appeared. We hired one of the attorneys, not just any attorney. In fact, what was really important to us at the time was buying a title that could further get title insurance. And at the time, it was First American Title Insurance Company that was operating in Nicaragua. So we were like, all right. We called up the representative of First American Title Insurance Company. And we said, like, who are your approved lawyers to check on title? So we got a number of their approved lawyers that they would accept the research done by the lawyer to give to the title company. That's what we did. So the research was conducted on this title, and then we proceeded to buy it. And then once we bought it, we got the title insurance on the property. So this happened between June and November, buying parcels of land slowly while creating a master plan behind the scenes. And so you would think everything looks good. You check the title, the lawyer checked it, you got title insurance on the property, like everything's great. But it wasn't till about February that we got this message saying somebody was claiming that we were on their property. And we're like, oh, great. Okay. So what you do is when that happens, you basically contact the title insurance company because they look after everything as part of the policy. So you somewhat lose control over the situation because they get involved. That's okay. You want that to some degree. So they got involved. Now, what happened was, this is where things get interesting. Lessons learned. Uh, we had put down the claim that somebody else was um, had rights to that land, but what it discovered was a defect in the title. I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. And so we had to stop the sale of all our properties and start to investigate more of what was going on here. So, long story short, it took close to 2.5 years and about two to $300,000 to resolve that problem. And what happened in that location, to give you an idea, was we knew that the land that we were buying was once um, confiscated by the government. But there was a decree that gave the municipality authority to sell the land. And the person who we were purchasing the land from, he had been there for 10 years. So there was this nice decree from the government signed by the top authorities and the president. We had the confidence that the person had been there for 10 years and everything was great. But as it turns out, the location of everything, everybody made a mistake in the map. The map was messed up. The title was located elsewhere. So going back to legal systems in place, Reg, circling around to some of those legal systems in place in Nicaragua, using this example and taking it to the end, there were a lot of properties that were confiscated back in the 80s. Now, when that happened, when the new government took place in the 90s to somewhat rectify and bring compensation to the people that were paid, there was an office set up. And in this particular office, they kept track of all the records of the people that were paid. So it's okay if your land was confiscated, stolen, whatever you want to say. As long as the owner got paid, then you won't have a problem with that title. And that title would be called an agrarian title. I won't get into so many details, but if the owner wasn't paid, then that's definitely a red flag to watch out for, because that original owner could come back and say, that's my land. Now, that wasn't our case. Now, what was interesting about our particular property was we took it to the point in which we found out that the land was actually, get this, the land was actually confiscated, but the parcel in which we bought was never actually given out to anybody. So the owners of the property were still the government. Okay, so this presented a challenge. So we were talking to the title insurance people, and they were like, well, there's a risk going to the government that they'll be like, okay, well, thanks for letting us know that, that's our land. So much for spending $1 million, but we're taking that now. Or let's go to the government and say, here's everything that we've done. And this is what we're doing. And this is why it's going to be good for the community. And give us permission to be here. Even though it's your land, now we have 10 years of possession history from people that were there before, plus the 10 years, well, not 10 years at the time, close to like 4 years at the time that we were there. So let's just continue it now. And that's what ended up happening. Now, we'll get into this in further details in the challenge, but every particular country might be a little different. But when you're selling beachfront property or buying beachfront property, there are certain letters of permission that you need to get. In Nicaragua, it's called a letter of no objection, for example. So when you're selling beachfront property, the letter of no objection comes from the Attorney General of the country. And it basically says, we got no issues with you selling this beach land. It's yours. Go forward. Fine. Okay. And that's how we ended up solving our problem, is by getting those letters of objection from the government that they had no issues with us continuing on. But all of this is to say, when it goes to security of title, anything can happen, right? We had the lawyer check it, we had title insurance, and he still ran into a problem, okay, like this. And this can happen anywhere, not just so much Nicaragua specific. This just so happened to be my first my first experience. So the last 17 years working on our last project through a variety of different times, the one thing it did teach me about title when you're buying is the longer you can trace back the history of the title, great, at least 30 years. When the property has title insurance, it's great, doesn't guarantee everything, but at least it gives you a check mark that a third party has looked at the title and the deeds, and that they themselves have taken on the risk to create that policy. So, for example, our policies in our first project were very small. I mean, we paid $70,000, $80,000, and you only pay 4% of the purchase price to get a policy. So $2,800 on a $70,000 parcel is not a lot. In our property that's large, we paid over $4 million, and so we got $4 million title insurance policies that cost close to $4,000, $40,000. And I learned my lesson the first time. So when it comes to title, from a development standpoint of view, at least in Nicaragua, I went one step further. I'm like, well, I learned my lesson from First American the first time. So let me see what other carrier is in the country. And so we went to Stewart Title Guarantee that was operating in Nicaragua at the time. And these title companies, First American Title Insurance Company, Stewart Title Guarantee, and other title companies operate across Latin America. Some may or may not still be in the countries, but that's where you're going to go to get title insurance. And you'll do that after you purchase the property. And so I went ahead and I bought a second policy, spent $40,000 more on the land to have another $4 million worth of insurance. So when it comes to title and stability and institutions, the institutions that you're primarily looking at would be the laws in which are in place to protect foreign ownership in the country. In Nicaragua specific, this is starting to talk like a Nicaraguan webinar, but since we're here, I'm giving you the example. But you can take what I'm telling you about Nicaragua and apply it to any country. You want to find out what that law is in the country about foreign ownership and understand that, whether you can own title in your name. Does it have to be in a company? If it's in Mexico on the beach, is it Fido de Comiso? It's a bank trust. You want to know those details. So that's important. Where was I going with that? Let me take a second. Oh, yes, foreign ownership. Okay, so once you know the foreign ownership, then there's I'm getting into the details of the diligence of the buying the land. So I don't want to spoil everything because, but talking about title insurance specific and the problems and titles and defects, that is one I would say, look for titles in the country where they at least have title insurance on the land. It may not mean that you can still get a title insurance policy. The companies may not be issuing those anymore, but at the very minimum, you know that it was checked at one time. Now, here's something that is not commonly known. Not even the agents may not even know this because they're not too familiar. But when you're looking at doing your due diligence on a project and it comes to title insurance, since we're on that topic, what's important to know is once the developer transfers the property from their master horizontal property regime or their master plan to you, the individual purchaser, that property no longer has title insurance. So you don't buy a property that has title insurance and automatically think you got title insurance also. It doesn't work like that. What happens is once the property is separated from the policy, that property is no longer insured. So when you would want to have title insurance yourself, you need to go and buy your own policy, providing that the carriers are still operating in the country. Hence the reason why if the carriers are not operating in the country and you can't get title insurance, what becomes more valuable to you is knowing that title insurance at least once existed on the land. And that's why we did it, because we knew that having two carriers on the land and working with a reputable legal law firm that was known to be, I don't want to say non-corrupt, that's not the right word, but known to do things the right way was important to us. So when in fact into the future that policies were no longer given in the country, people could look back upon our lands and know that, hey, look at his title, it goes back 120 years. Kevin's been the owner for the last 20. It's got two different policies of title insurance. Even though I can't get title insurance anymore, I feel pretty good about being able to buy this property and I'm going to be okay. Because if something goes wrong with my property, Kevin's got an even bigger problem. All right. So that's something just to keep in mind and to know with title insurance. What else can I tell you? Is there, I don't know, Reg, that helped answer your question a little bit. I came around it a little bit. The common law or Napoleon law will be different in different countries. So I guess it depends what country you've been looking at, but that's pretty easy to find, ChatGPT or Google, and depending upon which legal system, you can determine, pretty fast what legal system is in that country. And it does make a difference when it comes to property rights and ownership and how things are dealt with. So we're at the 45-minute mark. I'm in no real hurry today. For those of you just joining on the line now, just in case you're coming in, I'm Kevin Fleming from Group Marana. Hi, TikTok folks. I see everybody's joining in and out, in and out. I'm on the One Country Way Challenge right now, so welcome and keep watching in. We're talking about how do you define and select and build in a filter and a criteria of what country it is that you're going to select, so you don't have overwhelm and fear of failure and unknown in your process of buying property. In this challenge moving forward, my goal is to help you once again to narrow down the wide number of countries you're looking at into more region specific, understanding region specific, how that relates to safety, location, tourism opportunities, and foreign investment, how to pinpoint those areas. We're going to go into that more tomorrow, what that exactly means. But for today, I want to leave you with this, and that is the most important thing is not more information. It's actually eliminating countries from your decision process. And that's going to help you to reduce the overwhelm and go to the next step, because not making a decision, okay, is a decision. But making a decision only after you see proof is also a little bit too late. And so depending upon whether you want to come in early because you're looking for return on your money, or you want to come in late because you'd like to buy something that you see, which is always great. Tomorrow, we're going to get into the types of investor that you are and how to categorize who you are and what is the expectation of risk. Because once you understand what country you want to go to, and now you start looking at real estate, the next most important thing is how do you analyze risk? Now, you can, I won't get into details, but I'll give you a taste of it. In our particular project, we spent with a firm close to $40,000 creating a founder member offering to raise capital for the development. This is going back to 2007, 8. And what I had learned, which I had never known before, was I very quickly learned what accredited investors look at in regards to risk when it comes to real estate development. And it is about 40 pages of disclosure when you're an accredited investor buying into a pre-construction development for the long-term return from an investment standpoint. But some of those risks will scare the hell out of you. Okay. They may or may not happen, but they certainly bring to your attention everything that could happen. And I think jokingly, this may or may not help me sell real estate, but I think if everybody knew what every single risk was in real estate, nobody would buy any real estate. So that's just to say that there's risk in everything. The important thing is to know how you take the list of risk factors that are out there. What has the developer done to mitigate that risk? And at what level of risk is still in the project? Because there's never no risk. If someone tells you there's no risk in a real estate development project, run. Like, just turn around and run. They're simply just lying to you. There's risk always, okay? For example, 2008 financial crash, okay? That's risk. Could that happen again? Absolutely. So there's always risk. Do we know when a financial crash will take place? No. Do we get an idea of when they might take place? Certainly every 10 or 15 years, you could expect one. So we're a little bit overdue. Now, understanding what happens in a financial crash when it comes to international real estate, that wasn't on the agenda for today or the 5 days, but would anybody be interested in hearing what happens to international markets in a financial crash? What you need to watch out for? Let me tell you, this will be good. I'll record this one. This will be good reference material. Let me tell you what happened in Nicaragua and around the world. In 2008, when the financial crash took place, it exposed a lot, all of the weaknesses in a project when it comes to capital and financing. Now, not just the project per se. So, for example, For example, a developer might have had financing and started construction, and now he can't continue construction because the bank has simply stopped the financing. Okay, well that's a problem. That happened a lot. What also happened was some of the financing that was done by private equity was done so much on leverage that borrowing from three other projects and the leverage that they had there was the leverage that they were using to fund your development, not mine, but in the essence, developments that were under construction. So when the financial crash took place, all the leverage in the system disappeared. So if you had cash, you were fine, but nobody was operating on cash when interest rates were cheap. Everybody was over leveraged. Now, what happened to the real estate was, of course, everything on the market stopped selling and there was a flood of product. Now, how that affects international real estate. So I won't speak so much in the States, but when you go outside the States and Canada, or let's say the primary Western nations and markets, in the international markets, things like this happen. In Nicaragua, for example, was an amazing opportunity in 2006, 2007, 2008, because people were buying product from $100 to $300,000, no matter what it was. But in countries such as Costa Rica or Panama or Mexico, starting prices were like 600, 800, a million, 2 million in the Caribbean. It was crazy. Nicaragua is basically 8, 6, 7, 8x lesser a price for the same product under new construction. So money was flooding into the country. But what happened when the crash came was, let's say, for example, Costa Rica, our closest neighbor to Nicaragua, $1 million condo on the beach in Costa Rica was now 300,000 or $400,000. And that was the selling price in Nicaragua. So the selling price of $300,000, there's not a lot of profit margin in there. So it's pretty well at its max selling price of about $175, $225 per square foot. So no one is going to buy in a pre-construction market, sight unseen, not built, maybe not even all the permits, years out to complete, when you can get this thing 60 or 70% off. That's already built and it's just right there. So what happens in these crashes, or when the market tanks, you might say, is that you get this flood of inventory. And it's definitely when you have cash waiting on the sidelines and you can make that purchase of that product that normally is 2, 3, 4x more, good on you for having the money. But for individuals who are in the market, or in a development or in a pre-construction, this is a risk you need to watch out for, because what that does, until all the inventory is gone out of the market and it's been sold and snatched up, and now people are now looking for deals again, that's when the market starts to recover. So Nicaragua specifically, it took almost 4 years from 2008 to 2012 for the market to recover. Now, from a very personal standpoint of view, how did it affect me? Well, when we went back into the market to sell, you have to understand that people's perceptions and mindset changed, right? The pre-construction notion of what to watch out for and be cautious of what you're buying, the mentality changed. So we saw projects in the country going back into the market in 2011 and 12, and all they did was simply try to pick up where they left off with plans in which they had, and go ahead and start marketing at the price in which they needed to get, and failed miserably, sold nothing. And I could foresee that taking place. And so the decision I made, which was difficult, was we had already spent about $2 million in plans and all the development and construction and everybody's dream projects of all the global team members that we had. And basically, open the drawer, put it back in and start all over. And the product we developed was developed around the price point. So back in 2011 and 12, the price point still was, how do you go back into the market with product $100,000 to $300,000 range, which means you need to back into that with the sizes of square footage. And that's important. It's important because the last thing you want to do in a development, or the last thing you want to do buying into development, is end up in a ghost town or with structures that are half built or can't be finished, because it depreciates the value of the property. So to maintain that value of the property, how fast you can complete the construction is what's really going to give you value to the product and bring people into the development. It kind of goes without saying, but the deals aren't in buying something that's complete. So this goes back into that criteria and the filter of what it is and where you want to buy and what it is. So whether it's language or flight time, or it becomes title and title insurance, or it becomes built or non-built, these are really strong criteria factor to start eliminating a lot of projects right away. So in the case that you don't have an appetite for pre-construction, for example, you shouldn't be looking at my project or any project for that matter that is not finished. If you want an appetite for finished product, don't think in your mind that you're going to have get in early pricing, because that's simply not going to be the case. So aligning your expectations with reality is really, really important. What I find when people come into these Latin American countries or countries overseas is their disillusion, their idea on expectation of reality is, for lack of a better word, out to lunch. It just doesn't match. And that's okay. That's okay. That's where I come in to try and help guide people on the right track. So I'm kind of a nerd geek when it comes to due diligence and doing things right. Very early on, the way in which I come at this challenge from you was I was a nobody in Nicaragua. I knew nothing about real estate development. I just figured, why not hire the best people under a North American due diligence framework of disclosure and securities, and bring that level of security and raise the bar really high, a lot higher than anything else that was taking place in the country at the time, to give people confidence, people meaning foreign investors, when buying into a country in which they've never done before. Or even had they bought into a country, whether it be Nicaragua or outside, the level of due diligence that they could see would be unmatched and give them comfort and security in buying land. So that's the framework in which I developed and spent over $10 million in the country of Nicaragua to build that framework. And so the challenge in how we go forward is about teaching you about this due diligence. I'm going to tell you exactly the good things and the bad things and crazy things that happened to me, stories that you wouldn't even believe. Everything from stabbing yourself with rebar, slipping on land, to being held hostage and ransom for land, if you can believe it. Okay, it's happened, and everything in between. So I've been through a lot, and I'm certainly, for those of you watching here today, for those of you watching the replay, wherever you're watching it, for those of you watching years from now, as you move forward into different days of the challenge, the goal here is to tell you everything I know about due diligence, to share with you the stories that have simply taken place and happened to me, what I would do to avoid them in the past, things that I would do exactly the same, and what you can do to best protect yourself so the investment that you make or the country that you go to fits you. You don't fit that country based upon what someone else says about it. What's good for somebody else doesn't necessarily mean that's what's good for you. When you select that country that's going to be for you, it's you that has to live here. It's you that has to invest here. It's you in a financial crash that might have to hold that investment for 3, 4, 5 years, 10 years. Who knows? Depends on what's going on. But I'll take you through over the next days, when you come back and watch more, what are the real important things for you to know that people simply don't think about, and how quickly logic goes out the window when the sun and the palm trees start swaying and the Tonya start flowing and the Florida Kenya 18 years start pouring. Who knows what's going to happen when you come into the country? But when you drop into a foreign culture, I can tell you one thing that's absolutely 100% for sure. You become a different person. Good or bad, I don't know, but you definitely become a different person. And certainly when there's no reception, depending upon where you're going to look at land, you change even further. You start to recognize the real you. And the one thing I can tell you about buying real estate overseas, when you're really buying it to experience it for yourself, is you're going to quickly come to really just tell yourself, like, I deserve this. And something happens when you drop into these foreign cultures that life slows down a little bit. For me, I like to say Nicaragua is a great place to come and unplug. Very much so. I know when people come here, Nicaragua quickly becomes their new favorite, their new different place that they experience. And certainly, wherever you go around the world, when you immerse yourself into the culture, you really start to experience something real. Now your world is no longer digital because it's very easy to get stuck in your phone and just lose track of everything. So when you're watching this to the end, the video, wherever you are today on TikTok, on YouTube, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, the important thing is you're going to continue watching and joining us over the next 4 or 5 days because I'm sharing with you due diligence. I'm going to take you on one of these days to my project live. We'll see how the reception is at the beach and walk you around and show you what it's like to drill wells. I'm going to show you what it's like to put in roads. I'll give you firsthand experience talking to a civil engineer and topographer. I'll take you down the beach and explain titles and what's important when you're going to build for construction. I'll show you just because there's a well in a project. For example, here's okay. I'll give you another tidbit. There's a bonus section, right? Comes to water. I'm not going to get into details of water, but let's assume you're buying a beachfront property, okay? And what's going to be really important, one, if there's water there. Okay, so let's say there's water there, but somebody might show you a well on the beach with a tank on top. But what they might not tell you is what is the pH level of that well? What is the solubility of that well? What is the salt level of that well? They might just say, we got this well and wonderful, great, we got water. But the really is, what is that water really good for? Irrigation. You're not going to be able to build or construct with it because the salt content's too heavy. So these are just small details, but you have to watch out for that because people will promote wells and water, but they won't show you the test results or the pH levels or how many parts per milligram that there is. So for example, we just did water tests in a well that we're running, and we tested bottled water that was 300 parts per milligram, bottled water that you drink. And our well is 283 parts per milligram. So really, really good. Higher is not good. 1,000 is not great. So lower is better. So these are just some examples that you'll find out over the next 5 days as I take you through some of the things that I've learned, whether it be through permitting, whether it be through construction, whether it be through financing developments, what to watch out for, the important things in a development that's under pre-construction or let's say almost finished, let's say a high rise, for example, if the HOA is complete or the elevator's in place or a building that you're taking over, you might be buying a condo in a building that's been there for a while, but little do you know, the roof needs repair and you got a $30,000 assessment coming to you next year. All right, those are things that people might not necessarily tell you and leave out when you make the purchase. So we're at an hour. I promised an hour today. I could go on forever, but I don't want to lose track. So just to recap, today is about helping you understand that really more information is not better. You need to apply a filter. That filter needs to have a certain criteria, and very quickly you'll move from overwhelm and get away from that analysis paralysis, and you'll be able to wind down at least 100 countries down to 3 really fast in one day by applying criteria such as region, language, title, construction, finished, not finished. You're quickly going to get down to 3 or 4 countries, and that'll help you eliminate so much overwhelm and free your mind to move forward and start making decisions that matter, which is decisions to move forward in a way that's going to be productive for you. So I'm Kevin Fleming from Group Mariana. Thank you for watching this video to the end. Tomorrow we're going to get into challenge day 2. So be sure you don't have to go register again. You've already done, so you'll get the notification from Zoom to come and join us. But for now, I'm going to end the presentation there.